COVID-19 is bringing all sorts of unexpected challenges, some of them acutely difficult to cope with. As a church, for the time being at least, we've had to close the doors to the building and bring our services online. This means obviously that we can't physically gather to worship, to pray, to take communion, to reflect on God's word together, or for much needed fellowship. And I know that these limitations are really hard for many of us, but it can be all too easy to get fixated on the struggles rather than looking for signs of hope. And there have been some unexpected positive consequences from the lockdown. One of these is that far more people are accessing our online services than would have previously done so when we were physically meeting in the church building. Many of our online Sunday services appear at least to be being viewed by almost 50% more people than we might have usually expected to come to a church service. Of course, some of these numbers might be repeat viewings of services by the same person, but I don't think we can attribute them all to my mum watching. Many of you have told me that you're actually finding it much easier to forward an email link to an online service to your friends or family than it might have been to invite them to come along to a service in church. And as people view church online, my hope is that it reduces the potential barriers to actually physically attending when we're able to return to the building. Of course, our youth and children's work carries on, both online and over the phone. We're recording weekly acts of collective worship for the primary school, and as these are emailed home, we know that they're being viewed often by the whole family rather than just the children. The children and young people from the Zoo, our Key Stage 1 group, and Fusion for Key Stage 2 children, and Hungry, our youth group for the teenagers, are still in weekly contact with Adele, our youth minister, and Beth, our children's ministry student. And this is obviously vitally important to supporting our young people's mental well-being and their need for hope and the love of God in these uncertain times. And then myself and our brilliant team of parish friends are trying to keep in regular phone contact with some of our most vulnerable people, offering friendship, a listening ear, practical support, and of course prayer. One of the biggest problems that we are facing as a church at this time, along with many other congregations, is a financial one. With the suspension of our Sunday services, we're obviously not able to take up our weekly collections, which clearly has an effect on overall income. We've put Hannah, our church administrator, and 2 members of the Little Fishes nursery staff on furlough leave, but most other expenditure remains fairly unchanged. But our current situation as a result of COVID-19 has only really exacerbated an existing problem. It costs around £165,000 a year to run St James's Church, and that money pays for the upkeep of the beautiful Victorian building, the maintenance of our community burial grounds, but more importantly, it funds ministry to adults and children alike, both within the village and beyond. Sadly, this year we were already predicting a deficit of around £13,000. Now, we have some money in reserves, but the PCC has already agreed to commit this to youth and children's work, and in September 2021, when that money runs out, as things currently stand, we'll need to bring our youth minister's employment to an end. And this at a time when we are starting to see real spiritual fruit in the lives of many of our young people. As a PCC, towards the end of 2019, we had to make some extremely hard decisions about how to reduce spending in certain areas. This means that we've delayed some recommended maintenance work to the building, We've kept staff pay rises to an absolute minimum at a time when we would wish to be being generous. And then the hardest decision of all was that we had to decide to cancel our mission giving for 2019 and 2020. And as I've mentioned recently, generous giving is one of the key marks of what it means to be a church. So it's obviously important for us to stabilise our finances so that we can make a return to generously supporting mission both here locally and further afield. So what am I asking you to do? Well, first and foremost, to pray. To pray asking God to provide for his church's need here in Rowledge, as he has done in the past. And remember as you pray that you are speaking to the God who holds access to every resource in his generous hands, if only we ask. Also, I want to ask you to pray about your own level of giving. Ask that God would grow in you and me hearts of greater generosity. And also to pray for the people on our own staff team and in the mission agencies that we have supported in the past who are already being directly affected by this downturn. Second thing to ask you to do is to ensure that you have signed up to the parish giving scheme. If you already give to the church in any other way, by cash through the collection plate on a Sunday morning, or using the contactless device at the back of the church, or by cheque, or by any other form of standing order, please can I ask you now to transfer your giving to the parish giving scheme. Registering with PGS involves one simple phone call to 0333 002 1271. Importantly, you'll also need our unique church reference code, which is 1706 17053. By using PGS, we receive all of your donation quickly and efficiently with gift aid added where that's possible, and it obviously reduces the amount of administrative work at our end, but it also makes future budgeting so much easier. And then thirdly and finally, we're seeking new givers. We're asking you, if you don't yet partner with us in the life-giving and hope-renewing ministry to this community and beyond, to consider supporting us with a regular financial gift. If we can encourage 100 new givers to donate just £5 a week, at the end of the year with gift aid added, that would be £32,500. Enough, for example, to secure and expand children's and youth provision in the village for the long term. As I'm sure you already know, all of our funding comes from you and others like you who regularly donate to the life of the church in Rowledge. There's no central Church of England pot that we can dip into when times are hard. In fact, a significant proportion of our income each year goes to support the wider church, to train new clergy, to pay vicars' salaries and pensions, and most importantly, to ensure that there is Christian ministry in some of the poorest parishes in the Church of England. I am very aware that I'm asking you to be generous at a very uncertain time, and at a time when, as a church, we've had to curb our own levels of generosity, and that doesn't sit easily with me at all. So will you pray with me? Will you pray that as a church we would move away from the position of only doing what we can afford to do, and instead to step out with greater trust in the God of all faithfulness? After all, this is what God says about how he responds when we're generous. He says in Malachi chapter 3 verse 10, "Bring your full tithe to the temple treasury, so there will be ample provision in my temple. Test me in this and see if I don't open up heaven itself to you and pour out blessings beyond your wildest dreams." God is opening so many opportunities for us to share the gospel and to serve our wider community. So let's remember together that God's work done in God's time and in God's strength will never ever lack God's resources. Thank you so much for listening.